I thought he was a lapdog for the president as far as, and he was national chair, remember? And he was fortunate. He got fired as national chair about that time. Bob, I don't know. I got a couple of nice letters from him at home. One when Jane died, and another one earlier. He says, I'm 85 years old and I'm in pretty good shape, but there are a few things I sort of want to get off my chest before I go to meet my maker. I can bring that out and show it to you. I finally had it framed. And what he said in essence was that campaign was very rough on both sides, and so forth and so on. I think some of my staff got overly enthusiastic, and I want you to know I think that, so to speak. Didn't amount to a hill of beans in the bottom, but Bob was obviously had something on his mind.
Yeah, if you could bring that in on money. Do you hire a Washington firm? Do you find a Kansas firm? And what's your...
We went with our Kansas firm, which were Emerson and Fransky, for most of it, with some consultation from, was that Martelli that year? Out of Washington, and a little consultation with Matt Reese, who was a Democratic guru in Washington. It was probably more state campaign than most Senate races in not highly populated states anyway. I don't know what we should have done. We should have won, but I don't know what we should have done. We really didn't take on that issue. And part of the
story of announcement day, I thought that was a pretty fabulous launch to the campaign.
We had magnificent support. Of course, we got on an airplane to go to several cities to announce, the first of which was Kansas City. And we came into that downtown airport. Were you on that plane? You would have been in the newspaper, wouldn't you? And this crazy pilot doesn't know that airport, so he tries to run and come down in the wrong direction on a runway, and there's a plane taking off. And so he immediately banks about like this, you know, with the plane shaking right over these oil storage tanks and so forth, and finally makes it back. But I think all of us thought we were very close to our maker. The whole thing went well. Then we went to Pittsburgh, Kansas, and we went to Wichita, and we went to Dodge City, and we went, did we go to Hayes? We must have gone to Hayes. And got back about 11 o'clock that night, and had a big crowd when we got back. And the support was magnificent.
You're giving speeches, you're talking. How much do you talk about your opponent being close to Watergate and Nixon? Is that the main theme?
Not as much as we should have, but although it was a theme. But we talked about Bob Dole voting against Medicare, for example, and a few other votes that he had made. And that he was in Washington to serve the people of Kansas, and he wasn't doing that. He was serving the Republican Party. And as much as you may love the Republican Party, that really doesn't encompass the state. Keith Sebelius died about 1980. I have no idea when it was. I saw Bob Dole out of Norton. I know when it was. I'll have to look up Keith's death. Probably about 1987, because they had just passed the 1986 tax reform bill. And I told Bob I appreciated the work he'd done on that bill, because he had done good work on that tax reform bill. And he said to me, he said, you know, that 74 campaign made a different senator out of me. He said, I realized that if I didn't begin to attend to business and attend to the people of Kansas, I probably wasn't going to be there very long, which was sort of an unusual remark. And it was, I thought, out of character, whereas the old Bob Dole would probably have snapped your head off. And so he's always had that theme. He's got that theme over in the Dole Institute. He had it in a window over there. how it particularly helped him. You have to admire Bob, because Bob was majority leader and minority leader for what, more years than anybody in the Republican Party, I think. And I don't know quite why or how, but Bob lived in the Senate, you know, and that was a good part of it. And they got the DOLE balcony now where he used to get his suntan to stay dark. And he was, by today's standards, a moderate. The things which he supported were pretty natural. He supported food stamps, along with George McGovern, but of course that's an ag bill. And he did a pretty good job in, I think, about 1991 on the disabled people law. And of course that was also fairly natural for him. He did not do what he could have done with Clinton to have a health care bill, but he couldn't do it. You know, he just couldn't do it. I talked to him for an hour at that particular time. You know, you knew he wasn't going to do it because he was going to be a Republican candidate for the Senate in 1996. And if he passed health care, he would have been damned to the same degree or greater that Obama is now for not letting people die on the street. We didn't talk about a lot. We haven't talked a lot through the years. We've had a few contacts.
In the 74 campaign, did you only have the one debate, or did you have more than the one? You had the state fair.
I screwed up on Face the Nation. I did not do a good job on Face the Nation. And probably that put a lot of encouragement back into the DOLE people, because he was pretty well down at that time. And I'm told, and I didn't see any polls particularly that showed me this, that I had a 2-digit lead at the end of September and the beginning of October. But I didn't handle that well.
You say you screwed up, and what do you mean?
Well, the Watergate thing, you know. So I sort of said, they said, do you think Bob Dole is a bad guy because of what he was doing for the president in the time of the Watergate hearings? And I'd say, well, the people have to judge that, or some asinine thing. And I really didn't handle it very well. And Bob had had a lot more experience than I had on national programs. And
I'm sorry, I didn't know you were on Face the Nation. So
yeah.
Were you on together with?
Yeah,
Dole?
we were on Dole. Yeah.
Oh
Isn't that what you do on Sunday morning? If it's Sunday morning, it must be beat the press. But anyway.
Do you remember that was the end of September, you think, when that aired?
Mm-hmm. About the 1st of October. The debate in Hutchinson was about September the 24th. And Dole, of course, where we had Dole was he had gone along with the administration and John Connolly's idea of having 4 super departments, which would have wiped out the Department of Agriculture. And so we pounded that during that 30-minute debate, which he finished up by saying, you're going to have to explain to the people about all the abortions you've done, or whatever he said. I don't have a copy of that. I wish I had a copy of that. I keep thinking I have it. They ran it on public television a few years ago, and the producer promised me a copy, but I didn't get it. I think a Wichita television station or 2 probably has it somewhere.
I have a copy of the last of the Kansas Public Radio did a story, and you've got one as well, where there's the Dole's comment. We at least have a copy of that.
At the end. Yeah.
But you think at one point you had the full 30-minute copy?
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore.
A video of it.
You had a video.
I didn't have it, but like I say, National Public Radio had it for Frontline or something about the time Dole was running, either in 88 or 96. I don't particularly, well, I don't know how to handle this. Bob Dole got divorced a year or so before I ran against him. And the story which came out in 1988 from a physician I know is that Kermit Krantz No, he didn't do it. I guess Carter did it. One of the other guys in the department did an abortion on a Bob Dole girlfriend. Have you fellows heard that story? In fact, it was published, and they almost published it in 1996 in the Washington Post. And the guy told me he was going to publish it the weekend before. I didn't care too much one way or the other, and then he called me after they didn't publish it and said Dole was going to lose anyway. You know, why throw this personal thing into the grinder? But anyway, Bob Christ, I guess, did the abortion. Kermit sat with Dole in the waiting room. The intern who was on that, they did it on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening or something over at KU, presumably. And I went back in 1979 to get retreaded, so to speak, to go back into practice. And I said, wait a minute, that can't be right. Anyway, at some point I asked Bob Christ why he didn't bring that up before 1988. And he said, because I didn't like your politics and I knew it would be Dole. And he was honest about it. I'd known Bob for a number of years. He was just about like Ron Paul politically. And so anyway, that would have been nice to have known in
The
19...
campaign attracted a lot of national press. I mean, you were on CBS Evening News, Walter Cronkite, Bill Plant came out. It was like 3 minutes. I mean, that's like a feature-length film. I mean, there was a lot of national press. Did that help with fundraising? Did it help with a sense of momentum?
That's part of the mechanics I really probably don't understand. And the guy who spends the most money usually wins. And these amounts are very modest. But in 1974, we spent $800,000 and Bob spent $1.2 million. If we'd spent $2.2 million and Bob had spent $800,000 in a race that was decided by a percentage point, well, I'm sure it would have reversed the results. But I don't recall that much about the fundraising. Now, back in the olden days, we had different laws. I spent the $20,000 on my first campaign. I never paid a debt after that. I had never had a negative impact on my net worth after that, which was very good. But Bob Brock picked up an awful lot of money that we spent, I think over $100,000. And because Bob said we're not going to lose because we don't spend this or don't spend that. But we still were outspent 3-2. But I'm sort of vague on that, I guess.
I want to, before we move on, follow up to make sure it's clear in my head. You said, so you run in 74, you said Dole was divorced by then or was going through a divorce?
Dole was divorced by then.
He was divorced by March of 74. And at that time, did you hear that he had a girlfriend of his had an abortion, or it was later, years later?
Later years. Tom Leathers also had that in Kansas City in that weekly newspaper he put out. Tom died a short time ago. I called him once or twice to find out what information he had, and somehow never made the connection. I wasn't persistent enough. And that was bandied around, again, rather heavily in 1988 and 96, because that was on the presidential campaigns. But the article I have here on abortion and so forth, changed the ways of the world, not winning that campaign. Because if we'd won that campaign, Bob Dole would not have been the vice presidential candidate in 1976. And if Bob Dole had not been the vice presidential candidate in 1976, a lot of people think Jerry Ford would have won. It was quite a close election.